Welcome back to CSS, HTML5, and JavaScript. I'm going to continue session 9. This is chapter 9 from the book. We didn't finish last time's chapter 9, and that's okay because I wanted to make sure that the class understands the concepts of JavaScript before getting into more complicated concepts of JavaScript. So to that end, I'm going to start off with actually going through the questions and answers from this section. So this is the quick check located at the end of the chapter. And I'm going to start off just going to go through all the questions and I'll answer them and maybe give some examples as well as I go through them. So I'm hoping you can see my screen. I did share my screen with you, so hopefully you could see that. And okay, the first question: in a server-side program, the program code is, this is the answer. Back up. Okay, what is a server-side program and what is a client-side program? So we spent some time talking about that last time in class. Different programming languages accomplish or are run differently. And when it comes to JavaScript, JavaScript is what they call a client-side program. So as I started to say before, in a server-side program runs on the server. When you type something at your computer and the information, if the information is then sent to the server and then some type of manipulation is made, well, that will be considered server-side programming. If your computer is able to solve the problem itself and everything happens internally, well, then that's going to be client-side programming. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. The main advantage, well, in a client-side program, the program runs on a user's computer using scripts that are downloaded with an HTML and CSS file. So really quickly, some of the advantages and disadvantages to some of them is that usually a client-side, when you run the program on your client, it usually is much faster. No manipulation, no information is being sent from your computer or from the user's computer to the server. So information is happening faster. But that information, because the client's server, the client's computer might not be so fast, it also you're limited in the type of calculations you can make. Also, let's say you need information based off of a database. I don't know, for example, let's say that you're shopping at Amazon and you want to see your past information that was sent. Well, that will be more difficult. And when the information is sent to the server, let's say again with your Amazon order, there's no way that your computer would know all the, I mean, it might know some of the orders, but it won't know the history of the past orders that you've made for the past few years. So to that end, a database has to be, you have to query the database, you have to get information from the database, and that would be considered client-side programming. The information is obtained, and then it's sent back to your computer, and then from there, your computer will go and display the information. So that's a difference between server-side and client-side programming. Okay, provide code to attach your HTML file to a script located in the TNY functions JavaScript file. Assume that the script file is loaded asynchronously. So we have the following. We have this command script, and this will usually is placed inside of before your JavaScript code is being actually manipulated. I did give an example of this last time, and I'll probably do an example in a minute. We have script, and the source is going to be the name of the file, .js. JS is the JavaScript extension that we use, and this shows it's going to be, I'm going to close it with the script command. All right. Next we have, what is the difference between asynchronous loading a script and deferring the loading of the script file? So with asynchronous loading, the browser parses all the HTML and JavaScript code together, only pausing to process the script before returning the HTML file. With deferring loading, the browser defers the script processing until after the page has been completely parsed and loaded. For our what we're doing in class, it's not going to really make a difference which one we're going to go and do. So it's so you could use either one of those. All right, we have number 4, we have provide code to insert the following comment text in JavaScript file. So we talked about putting in comments. I use comments all the time for my own purposes and for debugging reasons. So it's always good to put in comments. So basically it's the / and then the asterisk. You can go and put this in. This will not actually show up in the, it will not affect your code at all. And this is for multi-line comments. If you wanted to, you could use two / at the beginning of a line. If you do that, then it's going to comment out that one line only. So you could either use multi-line comments or single line comments. All right. Next we have provide, no, 5. All right, provide the command to display an alert dialog box with the message Happy New Year. So we talked about this alerts are very useful for when you're creating a program at the very beginning in order to go into kind of test code. Again, I use it all the time for testing code and make sure information is working. When a program is actually running, your website is actually running, it's not so common to have an alert pop up. I mean, use it for reasons that, I don't know, if there's like a problem or you want to get the message really quickly to the user. Usually what the programs do is they manipulate some of the page, which I'll show you today. We'll talk about how to go and do that. But it is important to know about the window alert box. So all you do is you put in window.alert, or you could just do alert. I often omit the window part of it. And then inside of quotation marks, you're going to write the word Happy New Year. Close your parentheses. This is all inside of parentheses, and then put a semicolon because it's a command. And a variety of things can make this not work. Like if you forget your end of quote, it's not going to be considered what's called a string. It's going to get some type of error message, so it won't work. If you misspell window or misspell alert, if you like to use all capital letters, then that also won't work. So the window.alert will just do it like this, and it will work properly. All right. What will be the result of running the following JavaScript command? We have, well, there you go, like window.alert page loaded. So this part is good. Inside of quotation marks is good, although this is actually, I'm not sure if those quotations are exactly proper as far as straight text is, but I think what they want us to talk about is the window.alert, how it's in capital letters. And so this will cause a load time error. Load time error, meaning as the JavaScript is loading, it's going to get an error. We talked about different types of errors last time as well. This is a load time error due to the improper syntax in using the uppercase letters in window.alert command. You cannot put, we said that JavaScript is case sensitive. So this window.alert has to be in lowercase. All right. Number 7, what is a breakpoint and why would you use a breakpoint in debugging your code? So basically a breakpoint is a location in the script where the browser will pause the program, allowing the program to determine whether the error has occurred at that point in the script's execution. Again, it's I'll try to show some examples. You can make your own breakpoints by even entering. There are, depending on the browser that you're using, you're able to insert breakpoints, or even putting in an alert would enter would make a breakpoint, because the program does stop. It will wait until the user clicks OK before the program continues. So there's a variety of ways you're able to pause your program, and that certainly is one of them. And number 8, we have what statement would be added to your JavaScript file to ensure that your code is strictly interpreted, meaning it's all the code is written correctly, and you would use strict at the very top, and that would guarantee that your program is going to be loaded correctly. All right, section 9.2. What are the 4 types of JavaScript objects? So we spoke about that last time also. We said that there are 4 types of JavaScript objects. There's the built-in objects that are intrinsic to the JavaScript language. Those are ones that just are built into the language itself. And there's no way you could like memorize them all, and that's why you could just use the internet or have some type of resource available for you to go and remember them. But those are the ones that are built in, those intrinsic ones. We have browser objects that are part of the browser. The browser is depending on what type of browser you use. They try to be compliant with each one. I mean, there are some standards that are followed, although some browsers do deviate from that. We have document objects that are contained within the document displayed by the browser. So once your page is rendered, it's going to display something. Those are the ones in the document. And customized objects that are created by the programmer for use in his or her application. That's, for example, IDs or classes. Those are made by the user. So that would be the answer to that one. Provide the expression to reference all paragraph elements in the document. So this is where we start to kind of get into more the JavaScript and the power behind it. If you wanted to get the change or to get the values of a specific element, you would, there's a few different ways. You could get it by the class name, or you could get it by an ID here. They want us to get it by the tag name P. So document.getElement by tag name P, and that will go and get that element that has that specific name with it. Provide the expression to reference an element with the ID sidebar. So it actually has the name sidebar. This is something that you might have made up. So you have document.getElement by ID, and inside of quotation marks you have sidebar, and then you're able to manipulate that element. This is going to be a very powerful feature. We'll see it in today's class a lot, that we'll be changing a document many different locations just by going and getting the IDs associated with those specific objects. Provide the command to change the HTML code within the sidebar element to more stories. Okay, so we have document.getElement by ID. So we're going to go and we're going to get the element that has the ID sidebar, and we're going to change the inner HTML to this h1.morestories, and then closing the h1. So what this will do is, at first it might not have anything. The document might not have. It might be completely blank. But once we go and put this code in, and it's executed, we'll be able to change it to more stories, and it will be a header, so it'll show up as if it was there from the very beginning. So again, a very powerful feature. We did some examples last time. As soon as I go through this, I'll try to do some examples again. But that's how you would go and do it. This inner HTML is very important, and you have to type it just like this. All has to be inner, then capital HTML. But once you do that, it will change the sidebar to have this code in it. All right, 5. Provide the command to change the text within the sidebar element to current news. All right, same concept, right? We have document.getElement by ID sidebar .text content current news. So notice that this is text content and this is HTML, and that was because we want to change the text within the sidebar element itself to current news. Again, you don't have to memorize them. If you could always look online in order to go and to see which specific, if you're going to have to use inner HTML or text content, or we'll see today value. There are different ways, and it's, until you get used to it, it's trial and error, or just looking it up and figuring it out. All right. Next, we have the provide the command to declare the variable total months with initial value of 12. All right, so we're talking about variables now, and variables are a way of storing information that you want to use to manipulate one way or another, or in order to hold on to some information to display it later, or to do something with it. And they're temporary locations. As soon as the program stops, these variables will cease to exist. They're only alive as long as the program is running. And you would just use the letters var for variable. And in this situation, they wanted us to make the variable total months. And this total months is name that we made up. And because we made it up, we have to follow the rules that are associated with them. A variable has to start with either a letter or an underscore. It can't start with a number, and it can't start with any like exclamation point or anything like that. But in general, we don't even want to use the underscore. We just always want to make it start with a letter, followed by the valid names for a variable. You can only use numbers, letters, and underscores. No spaces, so it can't be total space months. It has to be total months, and they capitalize the M here just so we're able to see what it says, total months. That's easier for us to read. They could have also done total underscore months. That also would have been a valid identifier, a valid variable. And once we've created this variable name, then we want to give it a value of 12. So the way that you would kind of do it like from right to left, you say the value of 12 is going into the variable called total months. Okay. Number 7, what are Boolean values? So this is a new, unless you've dealt with in math, it might be a new concept. And a Boolean value takes a value, I guess just read English here. The values that indicate either true or false of a statement. There are only 2 Boolean values, true or false. So basically, we'll see, hopefully today also, we're going to learn about the conditional statements, and conditional statements are evaluate to true or false. But in general, a type that is of type Boolean is either true or it's false. Number 8, provide the command to create a variable named expiration date, containing the date, and this is the date they want us to put in. So we have var expirate, expiration date. This is what they want us to name it. Is equal to, and a new date, and this will be the date that's going to go into it. You can read the book on all the different elements of date. It shows the date as one of the examples to go through of a specific type in JavaScript. There are different ways, in addition to dates, there's other values you could manipulate. So, but date is one of them. So they're using date as an example, and that will this expiration date will get that value, and provide the expression to extract the hour value from the expiration date variable. So once you have inside of your variable expiration date, or once you have the date and you want to get the hours of it, because it's already in a date format, you could do expiration date dot get hours. And this is an important concept, this little dot operator. Once we have created an object, and we're going to call this an object here, this expiration date, we're able to manipulate it. We'll see also that when we're able to manipulate a lot of the HTML and utilize the features of CSS to change values and to change the contents of it. And a lot of it is done through this period here. Like here, we even have over here, right? This is document isn't like over here. This document is an object, document dot get element by ID. And once we get that element ID, we go even lower into it, dot inner HTML. So this dot operator is a way of getting more and more refined within the specific object to get the value that we want. All right, last section here. Provide the command to increase the value of this day variable by 1 using an increment operator. So we said there are a few different ways of going and incrementing a variable, right? We're able to, one of the ways we said was to do, let me do an example really fast while we're at it. Let me actually go and start some code, because I want to make sure that everybody understood from last time this concept. So hold on one moment. So I quickly loaded up this HTML file. Here's my HTML file. It's not so neat. I really should make it a little bit neater, but it's not, but that's okay. HTML, and here's my head. Inside of my head, I have this command script. The source is going to be C6 for class6.js, which is going to be my JavaScript file. And my JavaScript file looks currently like this. There's not a whole lot in it. I just want to make sure that the program is actually working. I took this from last class pretty much. And in order to get your JavaScript file to do something, you have to, again, we spoke about last time in class, how to invoke. You have to invoke the program somehow. So the way that I'm going to, and all this program is going to do here is I created a variable called var4 is equal to, I guess I could do var4, right? I can create a variable. I'm going to call this, I'm going to say, I don't know, T1 for temp1 is going to be equal to hello. So I've created a variable called T1, and it's going to, I'm just going to show on the screen the word hello. Now, in order to invoke this, in order to make this, I have to actually call it somehow. So where we're calling it now, we'll change this later on. Like in today's class, I'll show you how to do without other ways to invoke it. But for right now, all the way I'm going to invoke it is, when I'm going to call it, is by on load. So once the program, once this page actually loads, I'm going to call my load function. And we see here my load function is over here, function load. So it's going to load this function, and all this function does is it says T1 is equal to hello, and it's going to make the alert, and it's going to say hello, I hope. And so here it is, right? And I'm not using this stuff yet. I'm not even up to there yet, but let's just take a look and see how it works. I'm saving this, I'm saving that, and I'm going to my, over here, and I'm going to run it by doing Control R, and we see it says the word hello. Great, not very exciting, but this whole point was to show you the operators to increment and decrement and stuff. So let's just do that. It's going to happen inside of here, inside of JavaScript. And so I want to make a variable. I'm going to call my variable, let's say num1, right? I'm going to call it num1. I'm going to give num1 the value of 10, right? Then what I want to do is I want to show you that I want to prove to you that it says 10. So here I'm going to say, I'm going to do num1. So now it's going to have, we should first see on the screen num1 is equal to 10. I could do this actually. I'll say num1. Num1 is, and then like this, I have to put the side of quotation marks in order, I don't know, hold on. This num1 is, and a plus sign. What this is going to do now is it's going to say num1 is 10. I hope. Let's see. Go back to here and run it, and it says num1 is 10. Great. Now I want to increment it. So we said there are a few ways to do that. So the one way is num1 is equal to num1 plus 1. This will increment it by 1. So now if I run it, we should it should first say that num1 is 10, and now it's going to say num1 is 11. All right, let's try it again. Another way to do it is, this is one way. This is one way. And then another way would be to, I'm just going to take it like this and just copy it again and put this down here. I'm going to say num1 plus equals 1. And this will also increase it to 11 as well. Prove that right here. I'm running it. It says 10, and now it's 11. And finally, we have the shortest way of doing it would be to do plus plus. Num1 plus plus, and this will increase it to 11 as well. Prove it really fast. Right, 10 and 11. Okay, this plus equals is unique because you could also do plus equals 10, and that will make whatever it is, it'll add to it 10. Or you could do, it does not necessarily have to be plus equals, it could be minus equals, it could be times equals, so all those operators you're able to go and do like that. The plus plus is always just incrementing by 1. That's the, unless you, well, it'll always be, in our case, that it will always just increment by 1. So, hope that was a good example. Let's go back to here to read it here, right? We have, right, so this, where are we? Here. All right, so provide the command to increase the value by 1 using the increment operator. So that was the large example. This day plus plus is going to go and increase it by 1. And then we have rewrite the following command using an assignment operator. So an assignment operator. So we have income here is going to be the current income minus taxes. So it's going to be income minus equals taxes. And that will go and give us the taxes. Provide the expression to return the value of daily income rounded up to the next highest integer. So here we saw last time in class a whole lot of different math functions that you're able to go and use inside of this math object here. And one of them was called ceiling. You know, so if you ever used a spreadsheet, this might be familiar to you as well. So this command, it will round up. So the ceiling command rounds up. If I wanted to, it'll round it up to the nearest value. Okay, let's see. The area of a circle is pi r squared, where r is the radius of a circle. Provide a JavaScript expression to return the circle's area where the radius has been stored in a variable named radius. So basically we have math pi. Pi is built into the system. It knows what pi is. And we times math dot power, POW is the power. And we have radius raised to the second power, raised to the second power. So this POW is the power function they're able to go and use in order to go into to get the radius using a power. Number 5, provide the code to create a function named calc circle area that returns the area of a circle for a given radius. And so we have function. Oh, fine. So this is I'm gonna hold off on this right now because we didn't actually deal with functions yet. That's what we're gonna deal with today. So I'm not gonna go over this right now because I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'll actually jump right back into the notes and I'll start to do some examples from where we left off. So give me a moment here. All right, so this is where we left off last time in class on slide 53. And today we're pretty much, I'm not even sure if we're going to get to the next chapter today because next chapter kind of jumps in with something called arrays. And I first want to make sure that everybody has a good understanding, and I'm going to do some examples of some information the book does not actually cover, also because we're running out of time and I want to make sure we hit upon some certain features of JavaScript in order to enhance our HTML. So I want to do a few examples before we even start to talk about functions. And the book does talk about this stuff, later stuff in the chapter. Other examples I'm going to have, the book does not talk about it as much. So we kind of relying just on the internet and my explanations of information here. But the first part is, let's see here. Let's talk about and this is just to explain and to talk about an example on manipulation of information that's being put into the system. So I'm going to use this example again. I'm going to just keep this document. I've already loaded it up and we're able to actually use it. So I'm going to, let's do this. Let's do the following. First, I want to do, instead of, here. So we have this HTML document. We have a div ID called dat1. And having the value of 10, and here I have a div ID dat2. I'm using dat for data. I might as well call it data. Like, why not call it data? Right, data1, data2, and I'm not sure if I use data3. And again, these are IDs these are names that I made up. And if you take a look in the actual document itself, here, let me go to I want to get rid of this alert here because we're not using this example anymore. So I'm going to get rid of this stuff over here, and I'm going to comment this out. I don't want anything to show up right now. So I'm going to comment this out also. I'll comment this also. And if I run this right now, well, nothing will happen. You'll just see the numbers on the screen. Let's do 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. So if I run this over here, let me get my document 1 second. If I run this over here, I'm going to refresh my screen, and we see the numbers 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Great. But each of these, this is inside of a location, and you can actually take a look. If I inspect my elements here, right, we could see here, down here we see that this is div ID data1. So this is inside, right, and you can notice that when I scroll over different parts here, we see exactly where they're located, right? So this is inside of a location that's called a data1, right? So knowing that, now going back to my code here, I have 1, 2, and 3. What I want to do here is I want to set my first variable. I'll do this one here, var1 for variable 1, is going to equal document. I get element ID data1 dot inner HTML. And just to make sure that it works, I'm going to do an alert. I'm going to do var1, and we should see in the screen the number 1. I'm hoping. Sure, here, run it, and we see 1. Okay, fine. So we've done that last time. This is nothing new. But what is new is the following. Let's say I want to do, and let me first show you the information. Let me first do the example, then I'll talk more about it. I'm going to change this to the one that I previewed for. I did an example. This is going to be 2, and this is going to be 3. And I don't even need this one right now. I'll just get rid of it for now. So I have 10 and I have 3. And over here, what I want to do is I'm going to set variable 1 is equal to 1. I'm going to take this, copy it. I'm going to set variable 2 variable 2 is going to be equal to data2. Okay, data2. And I want to, on the screen now, I want to show you this command called toFixed. toFixed. Why do I want to show toFixed? I'll show you why I want to show you in a minute. Okay, hold on. Well, actually, let me first do this. Let me first show you the best example will probably be this. I'm first going to set. I keep jumping around here. It's okay. I'm going to say var variable. I'll call it t this time. Variable t1 for temp1 is going to be equal to 3. Okay, I'm going to 10. I mean 10. And I'm going to set this one over here. Variable t2 is going to be equal to 3. Okay, this is good. Now, if I do an alert here, if I do, let me set one more here. I'm going to set variable t3 equal to 10 divided by 3. Great. And now I'm going to show you the result of that. I'm going to say alert T3. So when we run this, you're going to get, I'm going to run it here, they're going to get 3.33333333 and so on, right? Which makes sense because 3 does not go evenly into 10. So I did this whole example for one main reason was to show you this toFixed element. So what is toFixed? Instead of doing just T3, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to do T3 dot toFixed toFixed, and open and close a parenthesis. I'll explain that in a minute, and I'll set this to 3. That's going to be a bad example. I'll set this to 2. Fine. So what am I doing here? Let's talk about this for a minute. This time, instead of it saying, I want, when you write your program, so when you manipulate your pages, I want everybody to have control over the amount of decimal spots that are that show up. Right? Up until now, we saw over here that it says 3333333 and so on. So I want us, instead of saying all these 3s, I just want it to be 3.33. All right, so how do we go about doing that? So we use this command toFixed, and it's built in to the system. It's one of the features that are part of JavaScript, and it's going to limit the decimals just to 2 spots. Let's try to make sure it works. I'm going to run it, and we see now it's just 3.33, which is nice. So now we have control over these elements. And remember, we're also able to actually change. If I would have over here, I'm going to make one more ID. I'm going to put in over here, I'm going to have data3. I'm not putting anything in here right now. And I want to actually put in this 3.33 into there. The way that I would do it is I would say, once I've calculated this T3, I could do this. I could say document, get element by ID, data3, dot inner HTML is equal to data3 dot inner HTML is equal to, and I'm going to say T3 here. Okay, so what's the end result going to be? Well, I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to actually comment this out to make sure this works. I'm going to run it here. I'm going to do Control R to run, and we see this is going back to the 3.33333. If we wanted it to actually have the value of 3.3, the way we do it is we could either create another variable. I could have done it here, by the way, but it's just easier. And right now, just for speed to do this way, I would put the 2 fixed over here. Let's say I want to have it, I don't know, 3 decimal spots. To change this to a 3 here, right? And so now this ID that has the data 3 is now going to be equal to 3.33. So we're going to see a lot more of this as time goes on. Let me show you something else. Let's do the following. Instead of me setting these variables to T1, I'm going to do this. I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to comment that out. But I am going to take this variable 1 here and this variable 2. Our variable 1 is 10 and 3. So our same 10 and 3. Okay. And I'm going to have an alert just like I had over here. I'm going to have an alert. But in this time, instead of doing, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say alert. I'm going to say alert var1, right? What was it? Var1. Let me first do plus var2. Let's see what we get here. var1, var2. I'm going to get rid of this right now because I'm going to run this, and we'll see we get the number 103. 103. Well, that doesn't look quite right now, does it? 103. If I add 10 and I add 3, if I have 10 and 3, it should be 13. It should not be 103. So what's happening here? So what's happening here is that JavaScript is looking at this code here. It's seeing, oh, there's data 1 has a value of 10 and it has the value of 3 here, but it doesn't know that this value 10 is an integer 10. It thinks that it's a text 10, and it thinks over here that this is a text 3. So there's a big difference between the number 10 and the word, the letters 10. The letters 10 is just the character 1 and the character 0. And you can't add, if you add the character 1 and the character 0 and you add the character 3 to it, you're going to get exactly this. You're going to get a 1, a 0, and a 3. So there's a way to fix this. If you know for sure that you're going to want to deal with, in a book, this chapter deals with this as well. It's going to deal with this specific, converting the word or the character string 10, converting it to an integer. The way that we would convert it is as follows. We want to take this, there's something called parse int. And I guess, as I said, there will be a slide on it in a few minutes, but we're able to parse, when parsing means going through the actual characters and converting that into an integer value. The way you would do it is you actually write, it's a function. So you're going to do PRSC, parse, and then int. There's for integers. There's also a parse int for floats, but we're going to do parse. Did I spell it right? PRSC, parse int var1, and I'm going to do parse int var2. Okay, and what this is going to do is it's going to take this var1, it's going to say, oh, it's the character 1 and the character 0. Oh, 1 and a 0 means it's the actual integer value of 10. So it's going to take this information, it's going to it's going to make it into a 10. This one too here, it's going to see the whatever it was, the 3, and it's going to convert the character 3 into a number 3. So now when I run this, see over here, I'm going to do refresh and run it. And we see that now it's 13. It's a big deal. You'll see that, I mean, you have to remember that when you create these, when you're trying to do some type of manipulation, math manipulation, if you're not getting the proper answer, it might be because you're not parsing it in the proper way. So keep this in mind when you're going and creating your application. All right. And while we're on this note of parsing information and actually manipulating it, I want to talk about the modulus that we dealt with last time in class. The modulus is a, I could do these examples, use the same example here as, actually comment this out, I'm going to comment this out, and comment this out, and I'll put this one back, and this one back. And okay, so I'm going to do 10. I'm just going to throw it in right here instead of doing over another variable. I'm going to do T1. mod T2. So what am I doing here? I'm doing 10 mod 3. So what is 10 mod 3? 10 mod 3 is the same thing as saying what is the remainder of 10 divided by 3. And if we run it over here, we'll see that the remainder of 10 divided by 3 is going to be 1, because 3 goes into 10 3 times with a remainder of 1. And I said last time it comes in very handy for a lot of different types of formatting that you might want to use. You can see if something's even tables. It's very useful. You'll see if you use it, if you get in the habit of using it, you'll wonder how you ever got around without using it. There are a few tricky ones here that I also pointed out last time. Let's say I have, let's do 5 mod 5. 5 mod 5, the answer is going to be, just like you expected to do, 5 divided by 5 is 1 with a remainder of 0. So remember that. And finally, if I have a 6 in here, okay, 56 also worked, but I wanted to do a 6, right? How many times does 6 go into 5? Well, 6 goes into 5 0 times with a remainder of 5, because it didn't go into it at all. So those are the main ones that we could deal with. You could also have like 1, obviously, how many times if I do this, right? It's going to be 0 times also, because 1 goes into it perfect amount of times without any remainders. So that's the overall, that's the modulus. That's the modulus operator inside of math. And so we talked about the plus plus, the modulus. We talked about the division, the multiplication. I think that's it. Also, JavaScript is, if it follows the regular order of operations. Keep that in mind, the regular order of operations that you're used to in any type of, when you do regular math equations. And if you wanted to make sure that when numbers got added or subtracted before anything else, make sure you can put them inside of parentheses in order to make sure that manipulates it first. All right, now that I've talked about the parse int and I've talked about this the parse int in order to make it a parse int, also the fixed, in order that we can see some examples that are the slides are going to talk about. Give me a second, we'll bring it up. Where are my slides? My slides are here. All right, so, oh yeah, these are the math constants that are built in. Okay, functions. So a function is a collection of commands that can perform an action or return a value. I'll do a very basic example, okay? A very basic example. I'm going to, I don't want this, sorry, I don't know why I did that. I'm gonna change this over here. No, over here. I'm gonna get rid of this. I'm just gonna comment it out. I know I'm commenting out, that's because I never know if I'm gonna use it again. And all this, by the way, is inside of an open and closed, right? This is all inside of a function already on this load function. But I'm gonna make another function. I'm gonna call this function, let's see, function. I'm gonna call it a function name is any name that is a valid identifier. So again, it follows identifier rules. I'm gonna call this, I'm gonna call it hello world. Hello world. Hello world, open and close. I'll talk about the parentheses in a minute. And all I want to say in hello world is, hello world, I want hello world to, I'll just start at something easy. I'll just do an alert. I'll do alert, hello world. Hello world. Okay, so I have a function called hello world, and all it does is it prints up the words hello world. Let's see what happens. I'm going to go to my my page here. I'm going to hit a refresh, and nothing happens. That's interesting. Why does nothing happen? Well, this function has to be the same way that we invoked, the same way we called this load. We have to actually call a function. And we'll see at the end of this class, we'll learn how to call a function with like pressing a button on the screen. But for right now, I want to call this hello world, and the way that I'm going to do it is by actually writing the function name. I'm going to call hello world, open and close my parentheses here. Go with that, and now when I run this, we see it's saying hello world. Why is it saying hello world? It's saying hello world because when it's loaded, it's going to call hello world. And so it says, oh, I want to run this function, hello world. What does this function do? Oh, it says hello world. I could actually throw in, instead of saying hello world, I said before that I want to explain what these parentheses do. The parentheses, I don't want to jump ahead too much. Hold on. Parameters. Okay, yeah. So you're able to, with a function, pass in information that the function could use. So I'll give an example. I'm going to pass in the word, I don't know, happy. Happy. So I'm calling hello world with this happy here, and this is the name of the actual function, and there's an open and close parentheses here and an open and close parentheses here. Over here inside of this parentheses, I put in a matching companion to what I'm passing in. So in this case, I'm going to say, let's say T1. T1 is a name that I made up. It could be anything, but I'm going to call it T1. And with that T1, if I go over here and I put in T1 over there, what's going to happen? I'm going to run my program. We see that it says the word happy. Why does it say the word happy? Because I'm calling hello world, passing in the word happy. This T1 is now equal to the word happy, and so now we're gonna alert the word happy. And you'll see that it's very, there are a lot of reasons why this. I'll actually ask you to do a small in-class assignment in 1 second, but let me show you. You could even concatenate this. I could say hello. Oh, I could say, I hope you are. I'm gonna do this and this and this, right? And so now I could run this program, and if I run it correctly, it's gonna say hello. Oh, it's gonna say, I hope you are happy. Why is it happy again? Because I passed in hello world. It's passing the word happy. T1 is equal to happy, so I hope you are happy. All right. So that's a very quick introduction to functions. Functions are the building blocks of all programs. You cannot really write any sophisticated program without utilizing functions. It's you will see in a minute. I'll give an in-class assignment, and you'll see more what I mean by the actual assignment itself. But let me go through the slides before I get there. I have a function, a collection of commands that performs an action or returns a value. We didn't talk about returning a value. We'll get to that later on. A function name identifies a function and a set of commands that are run when the function is called. So in our case here, a set of commands, we only have one command, but that's okay. It's going to go and run this command, and it's going to do it. And we have parameters, the variables associated with the function. That's what's going to be inside the parentheses. So let's get an example here. The general syntax, the general way of writing a function is function, function name, and then the parameters, and then the commands, where the function name is a valid identifier of the thing. The parameters are a comma-separated list of variables used in the function. You're not limited to just one. An example I'm going to give you in a minute is going to take 2 parameters, and the commands are the set of statements run by the function. Right, and so here the book's going through the clock example. You could go through that if you want on your own. They're going through the clock. We have here the function run clock, and it's going to store the value and put information out. So this is what I want you to do now. I want you to create a function called. I'm just going to give you a bit of information of what I want you to do. Then I'll ask you to go and do it. This is what I want you to do. I want you to. Let's go back to my actual here. I want you to have the same way before we had a number here and a number here. I want you to, in the bottom, the last row, this is like data 1, data 2, and we're going to call this like data 3. I want you to use a function to add this number and display the result. I do not want you to just do 10 plus 3. I want you to, whatever the value of this is plus the value of that, I want you to just display it on the screen. I'll give you guys about 5 minutes to do it, and then I'll go over the solution. No worries if you don't get it. I just want to make sure that you have some time in class to do some examples. So what I want to do here is I want to add the numbers together. So I haven't written it yet, so I figure I could write it as, you know, with the class together. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to make this over here. I want to call, I'll call this summit. Get the summit? Some nums. I want to sum the nums. And I'm actually going to, in order to explain even more the actual concept, I would like to use some parameters. So I'm actually going to copy this over here. I'm going to copy these two things. I'm going to go from here to here. You don't have to do it before, but I mean, I actually do in this case, but here. So I have var1, variable 1. I can even change this numbers here. Instead of var1, I'm going to call it variable num1 is equal to document get element by ID data 1. My data 1 is over here. Data 1 should be 10. And then over here, I'm going to do var variable num2 is going to be equal to data2 dot inner. So now I have a num1 and I have a num2. Num1 should be equal to, in this case, 10. It could change depending what the document is. And number 2 is going to be equal to 3 because that's currently what the value is. But I want to make sure that they're actually numbers that I'm dealing with. So I'm going to use, I'll change this in a minute actually, but I want to use a parse int. I'm just going to cheat by copying it from over here. I'm going to say my num1, there's a few ways you could accomplish this. First, I'm going to start off like this. I'll change this in a minute. Num1 is equal to parse int num1. So now I have num1 is an actual number and not the characters representing that number. And num2 is going to be the number 2, the actual number num2. So now I have a real integer num1 and a real integer num2. All right. Now that I've done that, I want to call my sum nums. What's my sum num? Well, what's my sum nums going to do? I want to put the sum of two numbers. How am I going to do that? I want to pass in the first number, num1, and pass in the second number, num2. By passing these numbers in and not hard coding it, hard coding means making it always the same number every time. I'm making this a much more general function. I could use it all the time. And once I get the num1 and num2, I want to do the following. I'm going to take this code again. I'm going to steal it just so I don't have to retype it. And I'm going to put it over here. Document.get element by ID. I'm going to look for number 3. Data3.innerHTML is going to be equal to num1 plus num2. So I'm going to set this one over here equal to num1 plus num2, which is data. This is 10 plus 3. The result should go into 13. I'm almost done. The last step I have to do is I actually have to call this sum nums. The way you call it is you just do the name of the function, sum nums. I don't know, hold on a second, sum nums, and I have to pass it. It's expecting 2 bits of information, 2 parameters or 2 arguments. What 2 ones are they expecting? Num1 and num2. And just to be clear, this num1 and this num2 does not have to be called the exact same thing. To demonstrate, I'm going to call this n1. I'm going to call this n2, which means I have to do this n1, and this I have to do n2. So it doesn't. They do have to match up. This, whatever num1 is here, this n1 is going to be, and whatever this num2 is going to be here, this n2 is going to have the value of that. So again, let me go through each step here before I actually make sure that it works. I get from my document, I search by the ID value. I look for data 1, and here's data 1. Data 1 has a value of 10. I get the inner HTML, so now this num1 is going to be equal to 10. The same thing with num2, it's going to be equal to 3. I convert the num1 and num2 into the integer equivalents of num1 and num2. That's what the parse int is doing. The parse int means it's going to parse, it's going to go through the actual text and get from it the integer value, the equivalent integer value. In this case, it's going to be 10. Num1 is now going to be 10. Num2 is going to be 3. I call sum nums with num1 and num2. This is sum nums. N1 is equal to 10, and 2 is equal to 3. I'm going to change the HTML, the text for data 3, and it's going to be n1 plus n2. So hopefully it's going to equal 13. If not, we'll try to troubleshoot and see where we went wrong. Here I go. I'm going to run it, and we see the actual answer here is 13. So it worked. Well, that's good. Obviously, if I would have changed anything here, we're going to see today later on. We're going to start doing text boxes. We're going to learn how to manipulate without hard coding ahead of time. But anything I make here is going to work. If I would change this to 50 and I make this to, I don't know, to 30, right? When I'm saving it up here and I'm going to run it again, we see that the answer gets changed. Let's do some quick experimenting here. What would happen if I didn't do this? Let me take this and that, right? If I didn't parse int it. I'm going to run it now, and we'll see that it's reading it as a character string, right? 50, and it's going to say it's basically concatenating the 50 and 30 together, so I get this 5030. So that's no good. I could have actually made this a little smaller, this code. This parse int is a function, and it takes in information, and it, like I said, it gets the integer equivalent. I could have done this. I could have, for this num1, do it in one step. I could do parse int. I do a parse int. Make sure I spelled it right. I spelled it right, yeah. I parse int, and what am I going to parse? I'm going to parse this entire point over here, right? I'm saving myself one line of, actually 2 lines of code by parsing it even before it gets to num1. By doing it this way, right? I'm deleting this. My num1 is going to be parsed already into an integer value. This part over here gets the inner HTML. Now that it has the inner HTML, it's going to convert it into an integer, and now this num1 is going to be that integer. And then I'm going to call sum nums, and it's going to take the value of num1 and num2. And again, if assuming I didn't make any mistakes, it takes on the number of 80. So this is a good example, basic example of what a function could do, and you can see how this could be very versatile, right? I realize that in our program we're hard coding, where this is always going to be 50 until we change it, or 30. But imagine that this is actually going to be an assignment that hopefully we have towards the end of class, is you could put in any numbers you want here, and you're going to hit a button, say calculate, and it will calculate whatever is in here and in there, and you could change the numbers and have it change again. And that was an act that you'll actually be able to make a page that has a, that's interactive, that changes depending on what the, on what it's doing. So that's great. So we're able to, at this point, get information and make a function. In this case, a very basic function. It takes in 2 parameters, 2 arguments, and it uses those arguments in order to display something on the screen. So the slides next talk about, let me get back to the slides for a moment. Okay, the slides next talk about, they talk about returning a value. So what's this concept of returning a value? The way that we did it right now is we're specifically going and displaying something on the screen. We could have a function return a value. Let me do an example of that. Okay, I'm going to go back to my slide here, and I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say, I'm going to actually take this. I'm not going to be using it right now. I'm going to comment it out right now. I want to return, return. What do I want to return? I want to return n1 plus n2. So instead of actually changing the elements inside of my function, I just want to return a value. You're allowed to return. Once a function hits a return, then the function is over. But we would have managed to return a value. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to take this. I'm going to put in an alert to demonstrate, A-L-E-R-T, alert, sums, num1 and sum2. What's going to happen here is it's going to call some nums. It's going to pass in num1 and num2. It's going to return to this alert the 2 values together. Let me save this and let me demonstrate what I mean. Hold on. Let me demonstrate this. I'm going to run this up, run, and we see the number 80 here. Why 80? Because 50 plus 30 is 80. So it's returning an actual value. And I could utilize that like this. I could actually take this document, I could take this whole line over here. I'm going to get rid of it from there. I have my var, my num1 here, my num12 there. I'm going to, instead of putting over, I'm going to have my documents dot get element by id data 3 is equal to, I'm going to take this value over there and actually put it over there, and this should accomplish exactly the same thing. And again, the way that it's going to work, I'll go through it one time before I actually run it, is I get my num1 from the document, I get my num2 from the document, I change my data3 is going to be equal to my function sum nums. What's my sum nums? It's going to be num1 and num2. Actually, I'm going to get an error. It's not going to do what I expect. It's going to, because I have to do the parse. Oh, I know, I do the parse int here. Yeah, so it should work. Let's take a look. Run it over there and run it, and we see get the value of 80. So it's a nice clean way of going and accomplishing the task, really utilizing all the, all these function features, right? And again, this function currently is very small, and we're not really doing a whole lot with this function, but we are managing to return a value. Before we didn't return a value, and now we are going and returning a value. So that's how that works. So, hold on. So moving on, let me see what the slides have next, because I do have some stuff that I want to go over with the class. This is returning a value. Let's take a look here. All right, so this is again, they're going through this timer thing. I'm not spending a whole lot of time on the timer because I'd rather spend time on other aspects of it. But the book talks about this timed commands, methods to update the current and the remaining time constantly. We have time delay and we have intervals, and working with the time delayed commands, there's a time delay command that we're able to automatically invoke with this time set time command delay, where command is a JavaScript command and delay is the, again, this is important only if you're going to be using a timer, and we're not going to be using a timer so much for our class, and so these intervals are not so important. I'd rather you understand more about the actual functions. Here is where I said that the slides are going to talk about the ways that we're able to turn a variable into an integer, and here it is. We have controlling how JavaScript works with numeric values, handling illegal operators. Mathematical operations can return results that are not numeric values. JavaScript returns the NaN if an operator does not involve only numeric values. So let me see if I could actually try one of these examples right now. Let me run this program. I'm gonna do an alert here. Let's see what happens. If I do an alert, I don't know, I'm gonna do 2 plus A. Let's see what happens, okay? 2 plus A, and I'm not sure what's gonna happen because I've never done anything like this before, but let me just run it. And we get over here, oh, I'm trying to run it, but I'm actually getting an error message because I'm sure I'm getting, if I do an inspect here, I'm sure I'll be getting a, if I read the console, yeah, see I have a reference A is not defined. Okay, it's not defined, it's true. Let me define it. I'm gonna define A, var A is equal to, I don't know, I'll make it equal to the word dog, okay? So I'm trying to do 2 plus dog. What is 2 plus dog is equal to? I have no idea. Let's see, another, A is not defined. Oh, because I made it lowercase a. Look at that. I'm working hard here just to get something I know it's not going to work. There we go. One more time. There we go. Oh, it says 2 dog. Right. So it actually did figure it out. It says, because that is correct. It's basically turning it into, I wanted to get an NaN result, but I didn't manage that because it's concatenating it together. What if I try to do multiplying? Would that do it then? Okay, well, there we go, finally. Okay, so this means that it's trying to do some math on it, but the result is not correct. So yeah, that's like, that's what we get here. JavaScript returns a NaN if an operation does not involve only numbers. In this case, it doesn't involve numbers, so I got that NaN. So you could actually check for that beforehand if you wanted to. There's something called isNaN. This function returns a Boolean, which is either going to be true or false. Value of true if the value is not numeric, and false if it's otherwise. And you can actually check beforehand to see if you want to go and utilize that. Or we have infinity. Value is generally for an operation whose result is less than the smallest numeric value and greater than the largest numeric value, supported by JavaScript. This is also good handy to come in if you're not exactly sure what the numbers are going to control. Finally, we get to over here where we can have this toFix, which we've already spoken about. JavaScript stores a numeric value to 16 decimal places of accuracy. So we saw at the beginning when we divided 10 divided by 3, we got 3.3333, a whole lot of threes, right? Probably up to 16 points of accuracy. That becomes a little bit cumbersome to deal with, and you don't want to display that many, so you want to use this toFixed method, right? So the number of digits displayed by the browser is controlled using the toFixed method. The way that you do it is the value that we want to deal with, or value dot toFix and n, where value is the value or variable and n is the number of decimal places displayed in the output. So, it's pretty straightforward. Let's actually, here, so toFix limits the number of decimal displayed by a value and converts the value to an index to a text string. And toFix rounds the last digit in an expression rather than truncating it. Let's do the following. Let's change our example here. I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes to deal with this. Okay, I'm getting rid of this. I want us to change this to the following. I'm going to go back to my example here, okay? I want us to have, instead of adding these two together, I want to divide them, and I want you to make a third ID here with a number which will determine how many decimal points we want to show. So for example, if I had the number 10 here, and the number 3 here, and the number 3 over here, my result, my data 4, if you want to call it, my ID 4, it should have the number something like 3.333. So I'll give you 2 minutes to try that out, and then I'll go over it. All right, so what I want to do here is as follows. I'm going to change this just so I am consistent with my example. I'm going to change this to a 10. I'm going to change this to a 3. And I want to make a new one here called data 4. Data 4. And I'm going to put over here, I'm going to put in, let's say, a 2. So this is my first one. I'm going to basically divide this by this and get this many decimal spots and put the result over here. So how do I do that? Well, my num1 is going to be my first one. In this case, it's going to be a 10, and this is going to be a 3, and I'm going to get another one over here. And I'm going to call this one to be a little bit more accurate. I'm going to call this, instead of calling it num3, I'm going to call it decimal spots, DS for decimal spots, okay? And I'm going to get that from data 3. All right. And I want my data 4, where I'll do it in 2 steps and I'll get it into 1, okay? I'm going to make my variable, I'll call it result. Result is going to be equal to num1 divided by num2, right? That's the first. I'll actually do it a step at a time, and I'm going to change my result. This will give me num1 divided by num2 is going to give me, here, let's build it up slowly. Here, let's do this. Let me get rid of this for a second. And I'm going to document the ID is equal to, hold on 1 second. I actually wanted to call this inside of I didn't tell you to do inside of the function, so that's okay if you didn't. So I'm going to make my result over here is going to be equal to that result. And this is data 4. Right, this 10 divided by 3, and to get the decimal, I'm not using this one yet, but I will in a minute. So right now, it should be, when I run this, I should get a whole lot of decimal points, which I do, right? But I want to limit it to only 2 decimal spots. So how am I going to limit it to 2 decimal spots? Well, I want to use the method that we just learned, which is over here, right? It's going to be toFixed, right? Over there, toFixed. And the way that we use it, let's take a look at the syntax again. We have value. I'll just copy this. Value.toFixed, and then the toFixed over there. So I'm going to say over here, result is going to be equal to result dot toFixed ds. ds is the number that I had in this last spot over there. So if I run this now, I should have just two decimal spots. So it's 10 divided by 3, 2 decimal spots. And so I could change this now if I wanted to, right? I could easily change just by changing, I don't know, if I wanted to change this, I wanted it, I don't know, 5 decimal spots. If I just change this to a 5, right? Now I should have, when I run this, I should have 5 decimal spots there. So nice and, you know, it's much more fluid. It's much easier now to go into to use. So getting back to the slides. All right, I have toFixed on the last digit, okay. Then we have this, the plus operator adds a text string to a number. Adds a text string to a number. So for example, we have, and I've already demonstrated this a few times, so this should be pretty straightforward. We have test number is equal to 1, 2, 3, great. Test string is equal to test number, so it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, plus a space, and where plus operator, if it's not numbers, it's going to concatenate, it's going to add together or glue together a number value with an empty string text resulting in a text string, which we know that we've demonstrated this already. So if you don't specifically tell it to be an integer, it's going to treat it as a as a string. So finally, the slides talk about this parse int. The parse int function extracts the leading integer value from a text string, and it returns the integer value from the text string by discarding any non-integer characters. So for example, this parse int 120.8 pounds returns 120. So it's going to keep looking until it's no longer an integer. Parse int weight equal to 120 pounds is going to return a nan because it didn't start off with it started off with some letters, so you're just going to get an error message, or it's not available, so it's not going to be equal to an integer in the end. And in addition to over here it says, just so you know, besides having the parse int, we also have, can you see that? It's hard for me to read. I mean, make it bigger, right? We have, besides integer, we have parse float, and that will get the float part of it. And we have parse int, like we already said. And you could also do these other, again, I'm not expecting anybody to memorize these. I'm not interested in that, but it's just good to be aware of. We have to exponential, we can make it exponential. We could do toFixed, like we just saw this. To precision returns a text string displaying values to the nth significant digits. And we is finite. This indicates where the value is finite and real number. So those are the different ones that we have. All right, so that brings us to the end of this chapter 9. So that's great. We finished chapter 9. Oh, now let me actually go back and finish the few questions that we have, and then I'm going to talk about a few other things. Give me a moment here. I think it's over here, right? Okay, so the next question was, okay. Second. I'm going to mute you only because when other people see recordings, I don't want them to. If you have a question, just let me know and I'll unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay, so where was I? Okay, provide the code to create a function named calc circle area that returns the area of a circle from a given radius. So now we're dealing with a new function here. Great. So here we have the function calc circle area, and we're passing in the radius. And so what are you doing now with this? The area is equal to, and here's the math.pi. So we get the value of pi, or the equivalent of it. And then we have math power radius 2, and it's going to return area. So they're using return here they're returning the radius value. So this is a good example of a few math functions along with a return value. Number 6, provide the command to call the calc your function using a value of 15 for the circle's radius, storing the result in a variable named final area. All right, so here we have final area is equal to, and we're calling this function circle area, we're passing in the value of 15. Okay, then we have number 7, what is the difference between variables with local scope and variables with global scope? Well, they didn't talk about this at all in the slides, so I'll explain this right now, right? Let me go back to let me talk about this over here, okay? And inside of my actual code here, if I make a variable num1 over here, this is num1, okay? If I would have inside of here, I'm going to say alert num1. I'm going to say, let me make it better. I'm going to do this. I'll do the value of num1 is, and I'm going to do over here num1. Okay, so what's going to happen? And let me actually make this a little different because I don't want to get it from the actual document itself. Let me just I'll make a new one. I'll make I'll call it var num10. Num10 is equal to 50, they're equal to 100, okay? So I have a new variable called num10, and I'm setting it to the value of 100. And then inside of my function that I'll call, I'm going to say the value of num10 is, and here I'm going to do num10, okay? And I have to make sure to call some nums, and I'm going to get rid of this return because I'm not returning anything right now, and I'm going to get rid of this because I'm not really using this, and I'm going to get rid of this also. Not using that, I'm just going to call some nums. Some nums. I'm going to pass in num1 just because I have to pass something in, otherwise I'll get an error message, and num2. Great, so I'm calling some nums. I've created this. This is all just to explain the concept of scope, and you'll see what scope is in a minute. I have num10 and I have some nums. It's going to call this, and I should see an alert. But what's going to be on the screen? You'll see what is in the screen in a moment. Go here, and I'm going to close this up because I get an error message. I'm going to run it, and we see the value is 100. Well, that makes sense because that was the value of 100. But inside of this some nums, I could do the following. I could say nums. I could say num. I can make a new variable called var num10 is equal to, I'm going to say 50, right? So now what happens? I have a num10 here and I have a num10 there. So when I run this, you'll see that it's going to say that my value is 50 because I'm running the num inside of some nums. The value is 50, but outside of this, if I would go over here after that, it's going to go back to 100. So the value of num10 inside of some nums is going to be 50, but outside it's going to be 100. Let me just prove that to you by running it really fast. Okay, there's 50, and here is 100. And the opposite is true too. If I got rid of this over there, right, it doesn't exist anymore. What's going to happen? I'm going to call some nums. Num10 is going to be equal to 50, so it's going to say the value is 50, but what's this going to say, right? It doesn't exist anymore. It's not inside of that, so I'm going to run it, and I say it's 50, and here I get an error message, actually. You don't see it because it's not displayed, but I get an error message because it does not exist outside of it. So, like it says here, the variables with local scope means that they exist inside of a function, can only be referenced within that function. Variables with global scope, meaning they're defined outside of that function, can be used anywhere within the script file or from within other script files. So getting back to here, if I make this num10, every single function has access to it because unless it creates its own one with the same name. Otherwise, if you create a variable inside of a function, it only exists, it's only alive inside of that function. All right, getting back to this over here, provide the command to run init function after a 5-second delay. There are no parameter values for the init function. Again, we didn't go with the book goes into more detail with that. Basically, we set timeout int with 5. This will be 5 seconds. And this one over here, provide the command, the run int function at once every 5 seconds. This is similar, right? Set interval to 5 seconds. All right, so those are the questions and answers for this check. So before going on to the next chapter, I wanted to focus on a few more details of this chapter. So, and I made some notes before class to explain. So give me a second here to get my notes out. And let me do the following. Okay, let me do the following. I'm going to let me start off by doing something a little bit. Let me do an on-click command. No, let me do, yeah, I guess an on-click command is first. All right, so let me go to my HTML, and I might use this code. I don't know yet or not. I'm kind of going to write this from scratch. And you are responsible, even though the book, this is not in the book, part of the homework assignment I'm going to give you, I'm going to be giving you a homework assignment today, not from the book. I'm going to make it my own. I haven't posted it yet, but I will be giving you a new new type of my own. All right, so here's the HTML is going to be more or less the same, but I'm going to do the following. I'm going to do over here. Remember, up until now, we've been able to call or invoke the JavaScript just by using an onload command. But I want to get rid of that. I don't want to use this onload command anymore because it's very common to use it, but I want us to be clicking buttons and using buttons instead. So I'm going to throw in a button command here. This is the first time we're kind of using buttons on this in the JavaScript part of the class. So how I'm going to do that, I'm going to make a button. B-U-T-T-O-N, button. That's it. It's built in. And I just want to, I'm going to build it up slowly, okay? I'm going to still go over here. I'm going to say click, click here, click here, click here. And I'm going to close the button. Close the button there. And I'm going to get rid of this now because I don't really need it. I don't know if I'm going to use it again or not, so I'm just going to comment it out so it doesn't affect anything. And yeah, so I have a button. It's going to say click here. I saved it. And I'm going to go back to my, this is all HTML. I'm going to go back to my document. Where's my document? Here it is. And inside my document, I'm going to run it. And it says click here. I'm going to click it. Look, nothing happens. Well, that's a shame. It's nothing. I'm clicking as much as I can, but nothing's happening. Well, that's because we didn't teach it yet to do anything. So let's teach it to do something. So what am I going to teach it to do? I'm going to, inside of this button, there's a few ways to do this, okay? And I hope by the end of the course, I'll show you 2 or 3 different ways to accomplish the same task. But then I'll show you what I think is the easiest way to use a button method, okay? So with this button over here, I want you to type on click, on C-L-I-C-K, on click. Notice how it turns different color. On click, I want it to do, I don't know, I'll do button click. It could be anything. This is going to be something I write myself. So it doesn't have to be the words button click, but it could be the words button click if you want. So I'm going to do button click, and this is actually a function as we open and close. So I'm going to go, and as soon as we click on this, I want to run this button click method. And so now inside, so it's button click. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go back to my code here, and again, I'm going to comment all this out because I'm not going to use this right now. Start comment there and go all the way down here. We might use it again in a bit, but for right now, I'm not going to use it. I don't know. I'm going to go over to, I guess it's all commented out. I don't know. Actually, let me do it this way because I don't know what I'm commenting out. There's so much happening here now that, and this function, I'll do this. Okay. Right, and that's it for that, right? Okay, so fine. All I want to have now on my, and I don't even need, by the way, on this on this. I don't need this function load anymore because I'm not going to be utilizing it, so I'm going to get rid of it there. Function load is pretty much only made because that was how we invoked it, but if I don't want to, I don't have to use it that way, so I'm just going to make a function, and I think I called it button click, right? BU button click. It's very important that you get that correct. It has to, this over here has to, this has to match this over here, right? Which it does, right? The button click. So now that I have that, I'm going to go over back to here, button click, and all I want to do here is I'm going to say alert, hello. Let's see if this works. So again, when I click on it, it should say hello. Go back to my code, run it, click this, and it says hello. Look at that. All right, so this is what I'm going to ask you to do. Okay, I'm going to ask the class to spend a few minutes, and the same way that we had before, some numbers here. I want you to put back the numbers, and I want the result. I want you to have two IDs, two numbers, and when you click when they do click here, or it could say sum here. I'll put the word sum instead, right? I'll have add. That's much better. Add. I want you to here. I'll even help you out a bit here. I will start you off by changing this. I'll do this. I'll do take this over here. Start you off. Copy this to over here, and I'll put a few more breaks in to make it look a little nicer. And I want you to, let's do some fun numbers. Lots of fun number. I'll do 20 and 30. Those are fun numbers. 20 and 30. Okay, and when you, the end result is when you click add, I want the result to be 50. So when you click add, I want the word number 50 to show up over here. All right, I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes to do this, and then we'll continue on. So let's go over this really fast. Again, I have my HTML. I have data 1, data 2, and then I have actually too many breaks. Let me just make one more break. Skip a line here, and I have add. Oh, right, and in order to get a result, I'm going to need a place to put it. I have data 1, data 2. I'll put it in data 3. And you should keep an eye on this. I think one of the homework assignments I'm going to have is going to be similar to this, so it's worthwhile to keep your eye on this one. So I have button click add, and I don't want anything in here right now. And again, my result, I'm going to I'll put the word here answer now, ANSWER, answer. So in theory, what I want to accomplish is that when I actually run this program, hold on, where's my code? Here it is. When I run this, I want to, the answer should have the answer should be, this should change to the actual 20 plus 30. So how do I do it? So go back to here. And we have a lot of the code here already. Again, this is going to happen on the button click event. So it's going to happen. I'm going to have my num1. I'm going to make num1 as parse int to the first one, inner HTML. Take this and put it over here. I'm going to take my num2, and I'm just going to go over here. Num2 parse int data2. And then finally, my num3 is going to be, I'm just going to steal this. I have to change it around a little bit. Document might be data3 dot inner is going to be equal to num1 plus num2. And copy this, place it here. Num1 plus num2. And let's see if this works. I'm going to run it over here, refresh it, and we see the answer is 50. All right. All right, so, and again, this did not have to be I could have returned a value just as easily. It didn't have to specifically, this is all happening inside of the button click. I could have also made it return a value. I could have used other functions, but this is, I think, the simplest approach right now. And notice how, again, I'm not doing an onload anymore. Now the way that I'm calling my JavaScript is all through a button click. All right. Let me go and do something else. Nice new thing to make this by a much more interactive way of programming. Instead of specifically going and using instead of hard coding it, like over here, data 1, data 2, I'm going to change this. I'm going to learn, I think that we've talked about actually inputting information into the system. And this is how you do it. I'm going to do an input type. I'm going to say equals text, right? And I'm going to say input type text. I'll build this up a little bit at a time, okay? And I'm going to actually give it a default here. Let me just let me comment this out right now. I don't need it right now. And I'll leave the button in just because, I don't know, I might use that in a second. Okay, and do this and that, and save it. Go back to over here, and look how my screen looks now. I now have a input box that I can go and put text in. This is going to be much, once you know this now, it's going to make your documents much more interactive. I'm going to actually copy this. I want it to be a little bit better here. Okay, so now it's going to be a break inside. It's going to be, okay. So now that I've done that, I could actually do a few things here. I could go and I could have a default value if I wanted to. I could have, I don't know, I can make value. There's a command called value. Value is equal to, I don't know, type a number. Type a number. Type a number. And this, go here, run it, and it's going to say nothing. No, it's not going to do that. I have to give it a default value. Value equals type a number. I'm not sure how to give it a value. I might have to use some JavaScript for that, but that's okay. I'll put that above it for right now. I'll take this out right now, and above it, I'm going to type in input a number. Input a number, and see how that looks over here. Input a number. I'm going to put a number in over there, right? And also, it remembers. By the way, it remembers the actual what you typed in before. I'm hitting right now the refresh, and maybe if I do Control F5 might be better. Yeah, Control F5 clears it. Let me try something else really fast here. I'm going to type value. Value equals input a number. Input a number and a 5. Yeah, okay, yeah, so that's right. So if you want a default value, you could use the word value here, and it will give an input, it will give a default value. And if I start to type here, I could get rid of this by selecting it and deleting it. If you do Control, in Firefox anyway, if you do Control R, it's going to refresh it, but if you do a Control F5 on top, it gives it a true refresh. A true refresh is the difference between remembering what like the input values were before versus now. In any case, I'm just going to stick with putting it, not doing it this way and doing it that way. All right. In order to actually make this a little bit more intuitive, what I want to do is as follows. Okay, I'm going to say input a number, and my goal is when I run this is when I click on over here, I'm going to say show. Right? When I click on show, I want the number that I put over here to show up in the screen. Okay, so how do I do that? Let me also get rid of this answer right now because it's not part of my example. Comment this out. Okay, and I want to make sure it's not there anymore, right? I want to show the number. Okay, so how do I go about doing that? Okay, so I'm going to go back into my JavaScript. And inside my JavaScript, I'm not going to be using this right now, but I'm going to comment it out because I might be using it in a minute. I'll get rid of all these and I'll start something completely new. I'm going to do the following. Var, I'll have, I don't know, I'll do text box. Again, you can make this anything you want as long as it's a valid identifier. Text box equals, and what do I want it to be equal to? Okay, so again, I'm going to do document dot. Oh, I have to give it a. Did I give it a value already? I have to give it an ID. Where's my HTML? One second. My HTML is here, and button on click. Hold on a second. All right, I have to have an ID value here. You could, there are other ways to do it as well, but I'm just going to put it in. I'm going to say ID is equal to, I'll say input 1, right? So now it has an ID. So once it has an ID, I should be able to go and get that get the value. How do I get it? So I'm going to do document get element by ID. Here I have input 1, right? Input 1. So that should be able to, and I should be able to get the value from that. And I believe I have to do dot value. And this is where it doesn't get confusing, but you just should remember that in this case, it's going to be the value of input 1. I just want to just going to verify that by doing alert text box. So what's going to happen, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to get the value by ID input 1. I'm going to get, once I have the input 1, I want to display it on the screen. So it should display the value I put in. I'm going to run it. I'm going to put in the number, I don't know, 100. I'm going to do show, and I have the value there, 100. Now, this is good because now, I'll give you the in-class, the stuff I hope you've been saving, what you've been doing up until now, because this is what I want you to do. I want you to change this. Instead of saying input 1 here, I want you to say, where's my HTML? This is going to say num1. This is going to be your input 1. And I want you to say num1 is that. I want you to have num2. And again, have another text box. And when you click on add, which you should create, I want you to add the first one with the second one and display the new result. All right. Wanted to create, I might have to share my screen 1 second. Oh, I'm sharing. Yeah, okay, fine. So I wanted to have num1 and num2. So let me just do that really fast. So my HTML is here, over here, right? HTML is num1, and I'm just gonna copy this like that. I'm gonna do num1, and I'm gonna have num2, and even have the same line, I guess, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to have over here, I'm going to have sum. So it's going to say the sum, and I have to put that result somewhere. So I'm going to put the result over here. And I'm actually going to get rid of the word answer. I just want it to show up. It'll be a little neater if it does. Let's just make sure that's looking good. Again, I always build my code up a little bit at a time because it makes it easier. So I have num1 and num2. And you know what, let's actually get rid of right now, see how this 100, let me see if I can get rid of that right now to see if I could, before even continuing, I would like to do the following. I would like to get back to my an onload method here. Let me just do this really fast. I'm gonna go back to my, I'll make another function here. I'm gonna call it function, function. I'm gonna make it load, and this does not have to do with that. I just wanted to point this out while we're already going through this. Function load, and when it loads, I want, I'll do this afterwards. I don't want to confuse the issues. I'll do this after. Fine. So getting back to it, sorry, I just wanted to show more information. So fine. So this is my I have num1 and num2, and I want to put numbers in here. Let's say I want to put number 45 here, and I put in the number, I don't know, 55 here, and the sum, I want the sum to show up. So how to do that? So once I hit this button, it's going to call the button click. And the truth is, instead of I'll keep a button click for right now. It's going to call button click, and the button click currently gets the instead of doing text box, I'm going to do N1 for the first number. Num1 is equal to get element by ID, input 1, right? I've called it, the first one is input 1. This one has to be called input 2. Input 1 and input 2. I saved it. input 1 and input 2. So now I have n1 is equal to document.getElementById input 1 dot value, and that will get the value of the first one. Okay, then I want to get the value of the second one also. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do, it's going to be n2 is going to be equal to input dot get2. Now remember, well, let me first do this. I'm going to do, I always test it out before actually doing to make sure it's working. N1 plus N2. And let's just see what the result's going to be. You could probably guess already what it's going to be. I'm hitting a refresh. I'm hitting Alt F5 to get everything nice and new. I'm going to put in, I'll say 10, and I'll say 20. I do sum, and it's going to say 1020. You know why it says 1020. We talked about this already. So instead of doing, I'm going to do a parse int to make sure that I'm getting it in as an integer. Parse int here, and a parse int there, right? So now, when I run the same program again, I should get, I'm doing Control S to save that, going back to over here, hitting Control F5, refreshing everything. I'm going to do 50 and 20. I do sum, and it should say 70. Perfect. I'm almost there. Next step is to, instead of doing an alert, I want to put that into, which one is it? I think it's data 3. So I'm going to set my data 3. I'm going to do document get over here. I'm going to do document.getElementById data 3 .inner HTML is going to equal to n1 plus n2. n1 plus n2. Save it. Back to here. I'm hitting Control F5. I'm going to do 14 plus 6. It should be equal 20, and there it is, 20. So that's great. It's like everything is working out now. I can do like any math problem. In essence, I'm making a very small calculator here. It should always go and do the properly. All right. All right, so this is great. We're able to put information. Let's see if we could do something else here. Let's see if, let's say that I wanted to, every time it loads, I want to make sure that there's nothing in this spot. Currently, when I do a Control R, the 4 is still there and the 5 and the 52 is still there. I want to make it completely empty. Let's see if I can figure this out. You know, there might be a little beyond the scope of what we want to do, but I think I might be able to do it. This is what I was attempting to do before. We have that onload command. Remember when we actually go and it's when the page finishes rendering, which calls the onload. So I'm going to make a function. I'm going to call, I could call anything I want. I could call it clear. Okay, I'll call it clear for now. It doesn't have to be called load. It could be called clear. It could be called anything. And what do I want to do on this clear? I want to actually set the following. I want to set this document dot get by value. Hold on. I got to remember how to actually set this value. Give me a second here. So I don't remember all the code either. I think I make it. Let me just see. I'm going to try this for a second. I'm going to do equals. I'm just going to take a test here. Test 1. Let's just see if this works. Okay. So what is this going to do? It's going to do document get element by ID input 1 dot value is equal to test 1. I just want to see if it says test 1 when I run this. Now, in addition to doing that, I have to also set my in addition, I have to go back and put back into when the page loads, because we took that out. So I want to go back to my HTML for a second, and I want to, my body, I want to do onload, call clear. And I got stuff happening here. Body, and get rid of this. Okay, so when it loads, it's going to call the function clear. What's clear going to do? Clear is going to go and it's going to set document.getElementById input 1 value equal to test 1. Let's see if that works. I'm going to run it. Oh, there. So that worked. That's great. Test 1. So why is that good? Because now I could do this. I could set it equal to nothing. Right? I'm going to set that equal to nothing. And I'm going to set this equal to nothing. Right? I'm going to set input 2. So now no matter what, when I run this, it should always be clear. I could have also put in this. I could have said like num1 goes here, and num2 goes here. Or I can say enter number. I can do that too. I can do enter, enter a number, and enter a number for that one too. Enter number. So now when you run it, it's going to enter number. So I'm going to click this, and I don't know. It's a little bit of a pain now because I have to actually select it and get rid of it, but that's okay. 25 and do sum, and so everything is going to go and work. So it's a nice little way to go about going and doing it. What I also wanted to show you, we're going to end. I'm not going to show you. There's some more stuff I want to show you about. I'll wait for next class to show you. Is that you're not limited. You're not limited to this method over here. This over here, right? Where we have button on click is equal to this button click, right? You have a whole lot of other options. For example, I'm going to bring in, let me go to my browser again for a moment. I could do this, right? I'm showing you actually some little bit of resource in W3 schools. Right, I have these are all different types of input events. There's something like on blur, on change, on focus, on select. We're not going to deal a whole lot with these different ones, except for a few of them. I would like to show you on mouse over. So remember, on mouse over. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go to my, should I make a new one? Hold on, let me just think for a second. On mouse over. Here, I'll do this. I'll say, okay, I'll make a new button. I'll make a new button, and I'll put it over here, and I'll call this instructions. Instructions, and here I'm going to say on mouse over. Okay, on mouse over, and you see it turn orange. On mouse over, and I'm going to say instructions. Instructions. Spell it right? Instructions. So what do I want? So now I have to make a new method called instructions. So I'm going to go over here, a new function called instructions. I'm going to call function instructions. And all I want for instructions, I could also put this into a div if I wanted to, but I'll just make an alert. I'm going to say enter two numbers to add. Enter numbers to add. So when is this instructions going to be called? Instructions are going to, I'm saving it, Control S, and it's going to be called when my mouse goes over in this button. Let's see if this works. Okay, I'm going to go over here. Run it. Okay, so I'm going to take my mouse. Notice I'm going to go slowly. Hopefully this is recording. I'm going to go over instructions, and we see as soon as my mouse, I didn't click anything. As soon as my mouse went over it, it says enter two numbers to add. Right? Again, I'm going to go slowly. I didn't click anything. As soon as I go over it, it's saying that. So we have it. Besides having that, you could have you could do this. You could say, let's have some more fun here, right? Instead of saying just that, let's make let's go back to my over here, and I'll make another div. Okay, I'll make another data3. Okay, I'll make data3, data4. Okay, and instructions I'll make back in my here. Instead of there, I'm going to make data4. Hold on a second. Document MLB value. No, I want this one. Get element by ID. I'll do this. Hold on. Document inner HTML for data4. Data4 is going to be equal to, right? And here we're going to say, instead of that, we're going to say here, we're going to say this. Okay. And I think I did this right. Get rid of these. So now, as soon as I go over instructions, it's going to say it should be equal to, let's see if it works. Run it here. Go over there, and we see as soon as I go over there, it says enter two numbers to add. But look what happens. I'm going off and it's remaining there. I don't want that. I want it to disappear as soon as I go off. So how do I do that? Well, let me go back to my documents here, and it says there's an on mouse over, and there's also an on mouse out. On mouse out. So let me actually do this. Let me do, actually, this might not work, so maybe I shouldn't show you it. On mouse over will be invoked. Let's just see what happens. If it doesn't work, I'll show you next time how to go about doing it. Here, so on mouse over, on mouse out, because on mouse out is, hold on. We'll do this. We'll do, you know, it's okay. I don't have to, I'd rather do it next time. But we see that these do exist. You know, there's on mouse over, there's on mouse down. There's like you get stuff when it click. There are click events when you click on a specific object. When you click on an object, you could make an event happen. These are loads events. We've already dealt with this on load. You know, we have there are other ones as well. Again, I'm not expecting anybody to memorize everything, but it's important to know that these do exist. So, all right. I wanted to start another topic, but I see that there's not enough time for the next topic that I want to cover. So we'll end it with this. I'll be posting 2 assignments in the online, and you should check later today or tomorrow for those assignments. And I'll probably start the next chapter next time in class, or I might continue on to do a few other things that are very essential and important to learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript together. As always, if you have any questions, you could let me know.